Nothing too elaborate.
Still points.
Ned Ryan.
Yeah, Brian Lyle.
How are you?
Good seeing you.
I publish a lot of the stuff I get from Generation Opportunity on my site. I do.
That's great.
I'm from Facebook.
I like your stuff. What?
Who else is coming? Telford's coming.
Telford's coming, but I haven't seen him.
I think it's got Twitter.
I think that's it.
Peter.
You know what, can we scoot, maybe we scoot down a little bit, I'll put one more chair up here, and I don't want to stand the whole time. Okay.
Well, there should be, who else is coming?
Well, Twitter, Telford.
Yeah. Well, good thing he didn't hear me on this. On my live mic, I was just trashing Twitter.
Strengths and weaknesses.
I know. People actually just love certain things.
Well, why don't I get us going? All right. There are a couple panelists that are still on their way, but I figured I would keep us on time and keep us moving. So when they arrive, I'll make sure to introduce them. My name is Ned Ryan. I'm the founder of American Majority and the CEO of Voter Gravity. Been in the D.C. area for the last nearly 20 years. For those of you that might have followed the career of somebody named Jim Ryan, that's my dad. Was a very successful runner and then congressman, most conservative member in his last year in Congress in 2006. Have done a variety of things with grassroots, training, technology. I'm very proud of what we do with American Majority. I see Matt Robbins in the back with American Majority. We identify and train people to run for state and local office. Big believers in building the farm team, equipping people to be effective in their communities, but also build from the ground up. That's how I believe we get to the real national generational change. With Voter Gravity, this is really how we take data and make it effective and efficient as possible, as quickly as possible. So votergravity.com, it's a map-based mobile technology that really allows for visualization of data and then turns data into votes. It really allows you to move data very quickly and make it actionable. So votergravity.com is our website. I want to introduce how I'm looking at doing this panel is I'm going to introduce all the panelists with short bios, give them 4 or 5 minutes to maybe make a few opening comments, and then I would like to ask questions of the panelists, a few questions, and then at a certain point I will open it up to the audience. So as comments are being made, points are being made, make questions, write down questions if you'd like, and then we'll try and fit those in as best as possible, and then we're going to wrap up at 5 o'clock. So I don't believe Peter is here yet, but we're going to talk with Don Seymour. Don Seymour is a Facebook employee who focuses on helping public officials and campaigns improve their online presence and better connect with their constituents. He's worked in government and political communications since 2003, integrating the best modern tactics with new digital platforms to help members of Congress and candidates better connect with their constituents. Before joining Facebook, Don spent 10 years working for House Speaker John Boehner, most recently as his Deputy Communications Director. So, Don Seymour. We have Brian Lyle. Brian is with us. He's the Vice President of Digital Strategy at Generation Opportunity, where he oversees the execution of innovative digital development and online marketing strategies. Previously, Brian worked in the public affairs industry, helping craft online grassroots campaigns for numerous campaigns, committees, and Fortune 100 companies. In the 2006 cycle, he was the digital director at the National Republican Senatorial Committee. During the 2004 cycle, Brian was the deputy director of Team Leader, as well as the Southeast political coordinator for the RNC. Brian Lyle. Floyd Brown, on the far end, is a political innovator, writer, and speaker. He serves as president of the Western Center for Journalism, a nonprofit foundation dedicated to informing and equipping Americans who love freedom. Floyd writes and broadcasts at CapitolHillDaily.com, where he serves as the chief political analyst. Floyd started his career in President Reagan's campaigns and as a political appointee in the Reagan administration. As Executive Director of the U.S. International Youth Year Commission, he spent 2 years representing the youth of America for President Reagan at international meetings. Floyd Brown. Now, there's two other panelists that are a bit behind in getting here. I will mention them so that when they show up, you'll have a better understanding of who they are. Peter Greenberger is the Director of Global Political Sales for Twitter. In this capacity, he oversees Twitter sales, their strategy for all public sector business inside the Beltway, in addition to leading all global political sales for Twitter. Prior to joining Twitter, Peter launched and led the public sector sales team at Google. Simultaneously, he served as the head of industry relations for the company, connecting sales and policy. Before that, he worked on political campaigns and in government for a decade. The other panelist will be Eric Telford. He is the Vice President of Strategic Initiatives and Outreach at the Franklin Center for Government and Public Integrity. Previously, he was the Deputy Director of Communications for Americans for Prosperity and the Executive Director of Right Online, a project of Americans for Prosperity. Additionally, he worked for GSPM as the Assistant Director of Marketing and Communications. So we've got a great panel up here. What I'd like to do is open up with a few facts, a few comments, and then what I'd like to do is, if we move from closest to me to the end, if you guys can have 4 or 5 minutes, just maybe opening comments, it'll lead to questions. So here we are. We're in Peter Greenberger, who I just introduced from Twitter.
I got caught up in the RAND.
Oh, yeah, the RAND traffic. So now you're going to be the opening in comments. Once I make a few, few interesting comments, we'll move from closest to furthest, 4 or 5 minutes, and then we'll go into some questions. Right now in 2014, there are over 1 billion monthly active Facebook users, 540 million Google Plus users, 241 million Twitter users, 184 of which are on mobile. LinkedIn has 277 million members. Reading and publishing content is 6 times more popular than job searches. Interacting is changing, selling is changing, marketing is changing, and consequently how we do politics is changing. The interesting thing to me is right now in America, there are 137 million Americans that have a smartphone. There's roughly 330 million, give or take, Americans. Of that, the adult population is a significant percentage. So most adult Americans in the US right now, a significant percentage, have a smartphone. They have a mobile device. Things are dramatically changing and are rapidly accelerating in this change. Now, the Democrats went all in on technology, digital and social in 2012. Obama campaign's one-click donate transformed political fundraising. It helped the campaign set a record-setting $690 million raised online. The Obama campaign tested the subject line of each email. Hey was the most successful subject line for the campaign. And through Barack Obama's Facebook page, he was connected in one way or another with 98% of Americans in 2012. Things are rapidly changing and they're not slowing down. They're going to accelerate even more. So as we think about the trends that we're seeing, Facebook with over 1 billion users, Twitter exploding, LinkedIn approaching 300 million members, most Americans, the first time I believe ever in January, most Americans access the internet through a mobile device instead of a desktop. I would like you guys to have maybe a few opening comments and then I've got questions to follow up on that. So Peter, tell us a little bit about your thoughts about where we are, where we're headed, and keep it about 4 or 5 minutes.
Sure, thank you. Thanks so much, and appreciate the opportunity to be here. As I think introduced, I'm Peter Greenberger. I'm the director of our political revenue team based here in DC for Twitter. And Twitter really sees ourselves as the global town square. It is a place where people can listen to the conversation. It's a place where people are free to express their own opinions on the events of the day or any other issue that enters their mind. And it's also a place to engage in conversation with fellow citizens, elected officials, candidates, campaigns, organizations, and brands. So because of that, we think it's particularly powerful for politics. There are 3 things about Twitter that I think make us different and make us powerful for politics and also incredibly relevant to the discussion today on the explosion of mobile. The first is the influential nature of our audience. 100% of the United States Senate are active on Twitter. 97% of the House is active on Twitter, and we're tracking down that last 3%. Every reporter in town, most pundits, most activists, hopefully many of you are active on the platform, getting your news and information and expressing your opinions. The second thing about Twitter is that it is live. It is real time. Events happen all day long. They happen wherever you are. Most of us, as you expressed, have a mobile device on us at all times. Being live means that Twitter is in your pocket and available whenever, again, the mood strikes you or events happen that you want to capture. And the third thing is just our overall mobile story. Twitter was started on mobile. It was essentially a texting SMS program. The limit of 140 characters comes from the SMS limit of 160 characters. That's 20 for your username and 140 for the content. So starting on mobile, we have transitioned very nicely into what is now a majority mobile focus for the whole industry and indeed for almost every industry now. And for those reasons, again, Twitter, I think, is a great place to start when you're thinking about your mobile strategy. Twitter is going to be where you're going to find a lot of very active, interested, and engaged users.
Great. Thank you. Brian.
Yeah, and I think Peter hit on some great points with mobile, and I think the trend is really getting away from thinking of mobile as just a phone. You have so many other devices out there now, whether it be a tablet, an iPad or Surface. I see a young lady with Google Glass on. It's really now more of an on-the-go strategy. So finding a person when they're on the go and delivering your content to them in a format that they can use at that time. So I think it's really trending away from websites being a overall resource and really refining websites into a place that's going to be more designed for user experience, meaning when someone comes in to your website, it is really funneling them into a place where they can get the content they need immediately. So if someone's having a debate with a friend in a bar, them be able to access their phone or their mobile device and be able to bring up the points that they want to talk, the talking points they want to bring up or reference the issues they want to reference in that debate. They can now do that, whereas back in the mid-2000s, we had to rely on someone to read a website and retain it all, and then go out and regurgitate that in a debate. So, and you see a lot of trends from there, also moving into small chunks of content. So this week, we actually launched our own action center that is built on a card-based system. So the website's called freethefuture.org, and it's built on small chunks of content in a responsive design. So the idea that someone can come to our website on an iPhone and have a completely different experience than someone on an iPad, and a completely different experience on a laptop, but at the same time filter them to a place where they're getting their content that they need and they want. Responsive design is now becoming a must if you're putting together a new strategy, a digital strategy, because now you don't necessarily have to develop tools in every different operating system. You have to now, by doing a responsive design, you can now be all things to all people because those devices will render your website as that with the content that person needs.
That's great, yeah. Again, Don Seymour from Facebook. I'll just kind of follow up on a couple of the good points that these guys made. In 2013, according to eMarketer, was the first time that digital media surpassed television as Americans' primary source of news and information. And like everyone said, that's driven largely by the shift to mobile. For Facebook, for example, we have 132 million daily active users. People actually log on to Facebook daily. 109 million of those are doing so on a mobile device. And so that gives you a sense of just how this shift has happened and how broad it is. Americans are more and more just logging on, like Brian said, not just phones, smartphones, but also tablets, services, Google Glass. The internet is no longer a place where you necessarily sit at a desk and access it. It's a place you carry with you everywhere you go. And so for us, for people who are involved in politics and trying to persuade public opinion and persuade people to ultimately vote for the people we want them to vote for, recognizing that how people are getting their information and giving them the right content for that platform is critical. For us, for example, on Facebook, again, according to Pew, 30% of the American people now get their news in some way, shape, or form from Facebook. And it's not because they're going to Facebook to get news, it's because their friends are sharing it. And that's important in part because nobody trusts the media anymore. According to Nielsen, 47% of people actually have any kind of trust in TV, news, print. 92% trust their friends. And they're getting their information from their friends on platforms like Facebook, but also Twitter and everywhere else. So again, providing the content in a way that is mobile friendly, responsive design. Floyd and I were talking before when the mics were on, before we knew they were on, about a training we did yesterday for the Empower Action Group, just kind of walking through some basic Facebook tips and tactics that campaigns can use. And so I threw together a responsive website just because I didn't realize the internet wouldn't necessarily work in the basement, but threw together a responsive website that just kind of walked through, like, here are open graph tags, and here's how that makes your content look better on a mobile device. And when you share it on Facebook, it pulls in the image that you want and directs the image where you want it to go. So all of this is incredibly important. The kinds of content that works these days, at least on our platform, and I think we can all talk about what would work best for us, but is the content that's authentic, the content that's personal and behind the scenes. And again, that's because people are looking at it on their phones. On Facebook, as you're scrolling through your news feed, you're seeing pictures of people's kids, people on vacation, what people ate for lunch, political commentary, everything else. It's content that fits into that rubric. That's personal. That's it's not someone standing at a podium talking. It's someone actually with people and doing something. It's things that are visual, again, photos and videos. That's what people are interacting with, and it's that more personal experience. And that's because, in part, they're using their phones and using mobile devices. So I did not prepare remarks, per se, so that's really all I have at the moment. But I look forward to the questions.
Perfect. Floyd.
Great. My name's Floyd Brown, and I'm with westernjournalism.com. And I'm kind of the gray hair up here because when I started in politics, there was basically in every city 4 television stations, ABC, NBC, CBS, and usually an independent station. And then there was 1, maybe 2 newspapers. And as an activist back then, working in the 80s, if you didn't get coverage from one of those TV stations or didn't get coverage from one of those newspapers, you did not exist. Nobody knew you were there. And when I see the revolution that has taken place in the 30 years that I've been involved, it's extremely exciting. The barriers to entry for you, the citizen, have disappeared. Each and every one of you can go out of this room today and be empowered to be a citizen journalist. Who better to cover the news where you're at, in your hometown, what's going on where you're at, than you? And so that's what we do at westernjournalism.com. We try to encourage people to become journalists. Now, the news business has dramatically changed, and as I said, the barriers to entry have literally crashed. And what these platforms provide is absolutely revolutionary. It amazes me the engagement that you can get from other activists and people for your cause or your issue. So I just wanted to bring a very simple message, and that is the message that, hey, our own internal Berlin Wall has fell down. And now you, each and every one of you, can be empowered to go out and be a journalist and to be engaged and to tell the story that you see from your vantage point, tell it effectively, but most important of all, use these platforms that are available to find an audience for those ideas.
All right, well, thank you. All right, I have a list of questions, and so I would love to obviously get a dialogue going. And again, those in the audience, if you're hearing comments that are made or is sparking a question, please make a note of it. We'll leave the last 15, 20 minutes for sure for questions. So I will open it up for you guys, probably about 4:40-ish. My first question is this. Not everything is known, but a lot's known what the Obama campaign did in 2012, from Narwhal to their general approach, general strategy to social, digital, even the technology. So if we know what the Obama campaign did in 2012, and a lot's been written about it, a lot's been discussed, why do you think the trends in center-right politics have not been accelerated? Why do you think there are still campaigns and candidates in the fall of 2013 elections still going door to door with pen and paper? So I would throw that open to the panel. Fire away, whoever wants to go first. Floyd.
I would say the reason that the Republican establishment is really in the dark ages is because there is a group of consultants who make extremely great money in using old technologies. I mean, I've been involved long enough. I created the Willie Horton ad back in George H.W. Bush's first race. And that was a 60-second video. When we did that video, we spent $100,000 on production of that 60 seconds of video. And then we spent hundreds of thousands to get it out. Now, with this revolution, you know, each of you can probably create a better quality 60-second video on whatever device you're holding in your hand right now. And, people, a lot of people that get involved in politics, they come to it for a variety of different reasons and often don't have knowledge, and they go to who they think the experts are. And the experts are people in Washington, D.C. who have big offices, and the media says they're the experts. So they go to them, and those experts make a lot of money creating TV commercials and putting them on TV. And so that is why you have this focus on, I think, the wrong mediums. But it's mostly a D.C.-based phenomenon.
Other thoughts? Surely there are other thoughts on this subject.
Well, you know, as a neutral platform, we work with campaigns on both sides of the aisle. We worked with both the Romney campaign as well as the Obama campaign in 2012. And I have to say that in terms of Twitter use and Twitter strategy, they were pretty evenly matched. And I know that's not the storyline that came out of the campaign, certainly the digital campaign. But as far as our use of social media, I think the Romney team did a pretty good job. But I would also say that the challenge facing the Republican Party with digital is not so different from the challenge that the Democrats are facing too. So I wouldn't get too down. Those same well-paid consultants exist on the left side of the aisle. And when you look at the percentage of media spent on digital in politics, it lags way behind where it is in other sectors. So right now in corporate America, your Fortune 500, numbers I've seen, and maybe Don or others can correct me, 25% of now all global advertising dollars are spent online, number 2 to TV. So digital has now surpassed everything else, print, radio. That is not the case necessarily in politics. In politics, it's probably still hovering in the 5 to 8% range. So as was mentioned, our voters are spending more and more time online, but the ad dollars don't necessarily match up with the amount of time that people are spending online.
Yeah, and I think to add on to that point, is not only it's the ad campaigns and the ad dollars, but it's a lot of times campaigns and different organizations don't put together their get out the vote strategies, or at least their digital strategies for get out the vote until too close to the election. A lot of these strategies and a lot of the investment needs to happen much earlier in an election cycle in order to test different platforms, to test different technologies, to work out bugs. Instead of releasing things 2 months before an election, testing them out several times throughout the year is really a much better strategy, and it's something that's just not happening because of that lack of early on investment.
Right. And the Obama campaign rightly gets a lot of credit because they did a lot of creative things. But like Peter said, the Romney campaign did a lot of creative things too. The Obama campaign just won, and so automatically gets everyone who worked for them is a genius, and that's the way the narrative's told. But yeah, both campaigns used digital media very well and did a lot of creative things. In the president's case, they made certain investments on, again, because I work on Facebook, and they made back a lot of their money, about $4.60 for every dollar they spent. They used it not just to advertise and persuade, but also to raise money, and did so very successfully. But again, that's one case. I do think there are, like to Floyd's point, there are a lot of people both in D.C., but then also, frankly, around the country who don't get the press that national campaigns get, but are doing a lot of creative things. Whether it's people who are running for office or even just local conservative, Tea Party, and other organizations that have an audience, they know how to engage with their audience, and they're doing smart and interesting things. So, I mean, I guess the question's a fair question. I do think there's a lot of people who are doing very creative and interesting things. You guys are one of them who do a lot of creative things on these platforms, and again, have an engaging audience and produce content for them. And I think just more of us have to do that and recognize that these enable, again, like Floyd said, for all of us to reach out to an audience and persuade them and produce content that they want to engage with, and more of us just have to keep doing that.
So the next question I have is, do we think social media is affecting politics, or is it fundamentally transforming how we do campaigns and politics? Does that make... Okay. Is it affecting it, or is it fundamentally transforming it?
I think it's transforming it.
How? Why?
One small way would be just in the way that, coming up again, not to keep referring to Floyd in this case, but Floyd mentioned the TV ads and the way people used to get their information, juxtaposing that with the way people get their information now. These days, politics, with these platforms that we have and with the shift to mobile, as opposed to being a broadcast medium where everyone gets their information from a few 30-second commercials, it's much more retail. It is much more door-to-door, but in a digital way. Messages can be transmitted to people that are much more personal. The way politics used to be done before broadcast television existed, or even in the early days of it, when it was neighbor to neighbor, community to community, people actually who you knew and you were friends with talking to you and you talking back. That's really where these platforms are excelling, and we're reverting in a positive way back to that, where it's much more personal. And so I would say it's fundamentally transforming in that respect. And again, Twitter, Facebook are really enabling that transition.
I would agree. One other aspect I would put in there is the speed, the velocity of politics now. And when I came of age on political campaigns, not quite as long ago as Floyd, but far back enough that rapid response meant responding within the same news cycle. So if your guy got hit at noon, you had 5 hours to put together a response and line up your supporters and do something so it would get the 5 o'clock news. It's now happening in real time. And we saw this, I think, most dramatically during the presidential debates. When Obama and Romney were up there in that first debate in Colorado, everyone knew Obama had lost that debate. You didn't have to go to the spin room. You didn't have to listen to everybody talk about it afterwards. It was happening in real time on your phone as you were watching it. And in many ways, what we saw during that debate has influenced, again, the broader industry. I'm sure many of you watched the Oscars or watched the Super Bowl, doing the same thing, commenting on it with your friends, talking about it with people that you don't know or people that you want to know. And I think that has fundamentally changed the way politics is played too.
Floyd?
Yeah, I think it's really exciting, actually, for society. I mean, 60 years ago, yesterday, Stalin died. And that wasn't that long ago. And if you think about it, what Stalin did when he murdered all those people, it couldn't happen in this world because we'd all know about it. And, Hitler before Stalin, had his final solution, but most people actually, it didn't penetrate their consciousness until after the war. Now that we have real-time news moving out at the speed of light, I mean, things like what we're learning about the NSA and what Snowden did, these things, I think, are great in the long term for society because we're getting freer, more information is moving more quickly, and people have an ability to react to that information. And I think as we digest all of this technology, it's going to make for a better body politic, and it's going to make for people being more informed about what's really going on with their government.
Yeah, and I think on top of that, it's just really it's really transformed everyday citizens to become influencers, and essentially now you can affect politics through social media, through contacting your congressman or your senator online, or just building your own audience and talking about issues, and you can become an influencer all by sitting on your couch, and I think that's extremely transformative.
Yeah. I wanted to, before I ask the next question, the wonderful lady with the Google glasses, acknowledge her. It's Michelle Westlander-Quaid, who's Google's public sector CTO. And she sits on my board, so I'm very glad that you're here. Thank you for coming. Since I have somebody from Twitter and somebody from Facebook, and Floyd and Brian, I want your insights as well, but I thought I'd pick your guys' brains and let the audience hear. What are the best practices for campaigns, or politicians, either or, with Facebook and Twitter? What are the top 3 things that you would say if you were to pull somebody aside, you'd say, here are the top 3 things that you should absolutely do with Twitter? What would they be?
I would say it overlaps a little bit with what Don mentioned with what works on Facebook. I'd say, first of all, authenticity. People can get press releases. They can read quotes in the paper. They do want to hear from the actual person. And in some cases, the candidate can't tweet him or herself all day long, so you can have staff help you. But when it is the candidate, it's nice to initial it or let people know that the principal actually was involved. So I think authenticity is very important. Second would be that exclusivity, behind the scenes access. We all get to see the picture of the candidates up on stage. What were they doing right before that? What were they doing with their family the day before, the night before? Again, the Romney team did this very well. I don't know if anybody followed Mitt's Body Man or Mitt's Body Guy. He had a great handle on Twitter, and he would take pictures of Mitt Romney before the debate, or watching his wife on TV when she was speaking at the convention. It was a look behind the scenes that you don't ordinarily get. And then third, I would say, from Twitter's perspective, is take advantage of those real-time moments. Things happen that people are interested in, whether it's breaking news or cultural events or some other issue or cultural event. And if a campaign or a candidate can jump in with a relevant comment, and of course focus on relevant and appropriate there, if they can jump in and join the conversation, it has the capability of doing very well. Jindal did this during the Super Bowl. That was not a great game for those of you who suffered through it. And he said, at least in New Orleans, we made it interesting by turning out the lights. And he got a tremendous response, among his most engaged tweets of the year. Although not as many as Hillary Clinton, who jumped in and said it's nice to see other people getting blitzed and sacked on Fox News for a change. And she had, again, 80,000 retweets. So if you can do it in a clever way, taking advantage of a real-time moment is a successful strategy.
Don.
Well, I would echo both of those, and I wrote down here and underlined the importance of content. Again, as Peter said, as we've all pointed out, I can't stress that enough. Content is king in digital media, on your mobile phone, however it is, however you slice it. People aren't necessarily going to like your Facebook page these days. They may not even necessarily be going directly to your website. They're going to see your content, however. They're going to see it when their friends share it. They're going to see it when it's tweeted. They're going to see it when it's shared on Facebook. And so making sure that the content is good, high quality, things people want to share and engage with is of the utmost importance. So everything Peter said, everything I said before stands. The only additional thing that I would add that I think is really important, I think is something new, at least for us, in the way people think about Facebook, and that's using it to also drive people to your website, using Facebook to drive people to convert and take an action you want them to do. One practical example, say you want to build an email list. You have a universe of people, you want to expand on that. I would use Facebook. I would put up a piece of content, whether it's an engaging photo, a graphic, whatever works for you in this case, that drives and links people back to, say, a petition or a survey or something that people want to engage with on your website. So then you can not only get their email address, but then hopefully also, if you're a campaign, convert them into a donor. Using Facebook, using our ad platform, again, to drive people to your other online assets is incredibly important and incredibly effective. We had a couple case studies recently, which were for Democrats, Democratic Governors Association, actually able to, it was the Terry McAuliffe campaign, sorry. They made back 58% of the money they spent acquiring new email leads just by putting a contribution form on a petition on their website. So they linked people to a petition, got people to sign it. The thank you page was a contribution form. And they made 58% back of their money immediately, which is incredible. I mentioned the president before making back $4.60 for every dollar. The DGA made back twice what they spent in online advertising with just one campaign by doing that, by using Facebook to drive people to their website, to give them an email address to contribute. So as campaigns and as people who are active in politics, thinking about how you can use these platforms, again, to drive people to your website to take some other kind of action. And then frankly, and I won't belabor the point now, but we also have tools that can actually help you expand that audience. So you've already collected a list of email addresses of, again, folks who have showed up to volunteer or given you money. There are ways you can use Facebook to then expand that audience, serve them with advertisements and content that would get more people involved. So again, thinking about these platforms in those ways I think would be very important.
That's going to be my next question, so hold, because I want you to talk about some of the things
Sure.
that you guys do at Facebook and Twitter that you really wish more people would tap into or use. But
Yeah, well,
Floyd, tell me.
I'm basically a blogger. WesternJournalism.com is really a multi-blog is what it is. And we started in 2009, and we really get almost all of our traffic through social media. Now, do we have an email list? Yes. But, email is really the past for us. So, we're doing just what you recommended people do. We post on Facebook, we tweet out our different links, and I want to echo and just confirm for you, it's all about the content. Don't just, send out, links to articles that everybody's already seen. Create some unique content. Share something that's different in your life that gives real value to the other people that are going to see this, and you will find that your engagement is going to go up tremendously. And I just want to confirm that it's all about the content, and then what we do is we spend a lot of time actually on what I would call headlines or subject lines, crafting lines that people are going to find interesting and are going to want to click and are going to want to engage with, because it's all about engagement. It's not just posting things on Facebook that, if you don't get engagement from your people, I can tell you Facebook is going to, not send your stuff out. So, take the time to think about what you're sending out and actually craft some content that's going to get engagement.
Yeah, and all those are probably the top strategies. I think to tie them all together is just to say that Facebook and Twitter are a great place for affordable experimentation. It is for $100 you can throw up some ads and really test out a message to see if it's going to resonate with your audience. And I think just because content is king, before you actually invest in a major strategy, these two platforms are going to give you instant feedback on if that message is resonating with who you think your audience is. You may also find on those platforms that the audience isn't what you thought it was, and they're going to give you a lot of analytics, so you can say, well, how many people in this location actually like these certain pages. You're going to find out how big your universes are to go and target folks and really get those folks on board with your message. And these two platforms right now are the easiest and among the most affordable to do that.
Can I jump in and actually just echo that?
Yeah.
I think Peter would agree. Like that's something that I didn't mention, but is a really important point. But taking advantage of the analytics and the insights that both, again, Facebook and Twitter provide, and that way you get a sense of like what your audience is responding to, what your audience is actually liking, retweeting, and interacting with is incredibly valuable and helps you actually then craft better content that's more tailored to your audience. And so that's an excellent point. Actually taking advantage of that.
So let me. I think I know where we're headed. So this will solve my next question. What are some of the things that Twitter and Facebook do that you really wish more people would tap into? The analytics. What are some other things?
There was something we learned after the campaign, speaking with some of the Romney folks, that whenever they ran a TV spot, and they noticed a couple things happening. The numbers would either move or they wouldn't move. And so they wanted to figure out what is there an early indicator to understand if a spot is working. So what they noticed after looking through it, when they ran a TV spot, and if it resulted in a spike in social media, whether that was mentions or discussions on Twitter or Facebook or elsewhere, if they saw a noticeable spike, it would lead to earned media. So you'd get a lot of more mainstream media articles about the spot, and the numbers would move every time. And if there was not a spike in social activity, if there was no conversation sparked by the ad, there would or there wouldn't be articles, and the numbers would not move. And they noticed it as an iron rule. And so what they said is, how can we help goose the social media conversation? As head of the sales team, I had a pretty obvious answer. But there are other ways too. You do want to make sure that you're having the conversations. But what my assumption is of what to do going forward is, instead of spending millions of dollars on your national TV spot and hoping that there'll be some social media activity resulting, you can do some testing beforehand on the different platforms to get a sense of what are people talking about, what resonates. Is this message creating a lot of buzz on social? If yes, let's go ahead and invest in making a spot and putting it out there.
So you would say maybe have a limited TV buy, throw something up on YouTube, like throw it out there and see how it plays. If it plays well,
that's right.
Go for broke.
And there's of course a history of that, right? Many of the iconic TV ads you probably never saw. It ran once. A bunch of news outlets picked it up, and then you saw it replayed. But either or, you could either run it in a very limited rotation, and then you could try to isolate the conversation by geography. Are you seeing a spike in conversation in this media market where you ran the spot? Or you could limit it to one of the platforms or several different online platforms to do essentially an online focus group.
Yeah, I think that's right on. In our case, I'll talk to people who want to start an ad campaign or create, some kind of specific ads, and what they sometimes miss, I think, is that their content in and of itself, it should be the ad. If you create a great piece of content that's resonating with your audience, that's the kind of thing you should put a few bucks behind and actually expand it outwards to your target audience, because you already know it's working, you already know it's resonating. That's the kind of thing you should promote instead of necessarily trying to craft something new out of whole cloth. So that's an excellent point. I couldn't agree more. The only thing that I would add, I think, is terms of like things that we provide or tools that we have that I do think would be of value to the folks in this room and to other folks who are running campaigns would be on our ad platform, which you mentioned before. And just for the record, I'm not trying to sell you ads. I don't work in sales. I'm just telling you the cool tools that we have. But you can create a thing called a custom audience is the first one. A custom audience, a use case would be, again, say you have a universe of people that donated before. They gave you $5 to your campaign. This was, however long ago, and you want to reactivate those donors. You want to reach back out to them. You can upload that universe to Facebook, create a custom audience of them. We will match the email addresses with Facebook users, and you can then target them with a specific piece of content, whether it's asking them to donate again, whether it's asking them to take some other kind of action, or maybe it's just, again, maybe you're just highlighting some of your recent good content to them. Or on the flip side, say there are people who donated recently, and you want to upload and create a custom audience and then exclude them from your targeting. That way you're not wasting money chasing dollars from people who have already given you money. So it's creative use of that kind of offline asset on Facebook can be really important and really useful. Building on custom audiences are things called lookalike audiences. A lookalike audience is exactly what it sounds like. You build a custom audience of people, again, stick with money. They gave you $5. Upload that custom audience. You literally then just click Create Lookalike Audience. Within 24 hours, we deliver to you a universe of people who, between 1% and 5% in the United States, give or take, who share X number of characteristics of that audience. And so therefore, if that audience of people are willing to give you $5, this audience of people, we determine, is most likely to also maybe be willing to give you $5. So you can target them with, again, your content or an advertisement, whatever you like. And so those are two relatively new tools that have been used, again, by Democrats, Terry McAuliffe campaign, Democratic Government Association, also the Romney campaign and others in 2012 when they were more in beta. But these are relatively new products that we've seen a lot of success with and are ridiculously easy to use. And again, kind of like Peter said before, this doesn't, and Brian, these don't require high dollar spends. These are things you can test out and experiment with and see what works and what doesn't. I definitely recommend you try.
I want to ask two more questions, and then I will open it up to the audience a little bit earlier. Things change so rapidly. I mean, if we think about where we were in 2008 compared to 2012, if you were to make educated guesses or theories, or where do you think we're going to be in 2016 in regards to how campaigns and politics are conducted? It's only 2 years from now. We're going to be in the thick of it. 2
years was so long ago.
I know 2 years was so long ago, and we're in March of 2014. I think we already starting to see a few things that are going to be different in 2014. But I'm wondering in the fall elections. But where do you think we're going to be in 2016 What do you think? What are you guessing, theorizing about?
Well, I have just been amazed by the revolution in mobile. I mean, I started blogging in 2009, and in 2009, probably 100% of our visitors were, from a computer, maybe a laptop. And now 70% of our traffic is from mobile devices, which is just, to me, astounding. The other major change has been the explosion of online video. I mean, more than half of our visitors now are coming to see a piece of unique video content as opposed to text content. And so those, I think, are both going to continue to accelerate. And I think it's very transformative. And I think it's a really good thing.
I think there's three really big areas that I think we'll see a change in 2016. One is right now we're kind of where we were in the mid-2000s with mobile devices. At that time, we were had a BlackBerry, had a Nokia phone, had a Palm Pilot. Now with having everything from an iPhone, iPad, Google Glass, and with wearable tech starting to really start to come out, I think you're going to see a device come out here soon that consumers will adopt. In turn, a lot of campaigns and organizations will want to start to build user experiences in those devices. And also, there has been a ramp up for big data. Everyone wants to collect as much information as they can, but now it's time to start analyzing that data. I think a lot of organizations were enthralled with this for the past 4 or 5 years of just trying to collect information and collect data everywhere they can, but then they realized, well, now what do we do next? And I think people are starting to figure that out, starting to figure out how to analyze data. I think the platforms and social media are helping them start to figure out who their audience is and to customize that a little bit better. And so I think you're going to take those 2 items and you're going to start to see more micro-targeting, which is delivering, finding out basic information on people as far as their boat history, their consumer history, tying that all together in a model, and combining that with micro-locations. So delivering people content exactly where they are. So if you're wearing Google Glass and you're talking to Peter, you're delivering content so a person can actually have a debate with Peter and talk to him about the issues he cares about. Whereas when you turn to your left and start to talk to Don, it's going to be different content, so you can actually start to engage in conversations. And I think you're going to see more strategies start to move that way as wearable tech devices become more popular.
I think one thing I'll note is each election gets a tagline, the big data election, or we like to say the Twitter election, but it usually takes another cycle or two for that to really scale. Yeah. In 2012, as far as we know, one campaign was able to really utilize big data. I don't even know if by 2016 more than 2 or 3 in a race will be able to do that. So I think it becomes a real powerful player when more campaigns and down ballot races can make use of it. So I still think big data will be there. Mobile, obviously, what we're talking about, is there. Another thing that we're very interested in, and I think that you'll see more of in 2016. For many years, people thought about the convergence of the internet and the TV. It makes sense, right? There's this huge screen on your wall, and then you've got all these other screens. And in the advertising industry for years, again, people have been wondering when and where and how is this convergence going to take place. And it turns out that it may not be necessarily a convergence, it just might be a multi-screen or dual screen experience where you've got your vertical screen on the wall and then you've got your horizontal screen in your hand. And I think increasingly you're going to see this very interesting interplay between the devices. So Again, during the Oscars, you saw Ellen take her now famous selfie, which resulted in 3 million retweets and over 3 billion impressions, people who saw that photo. Now, not all of us can take a selfie with Brad Pitt and Julie Roberts and Jennifer Lawrence and another assorted guests, but we can take cues from what's happening on TV. We can respond, and I think increasingly you'll see some interesting implementations allowing you at home to interact with the content that you're watching on TV. And you're starting to see that voting on some of these performance shows, The Voice, Idol. You can now vote with a hashtag or on Facebook or texting. I think you're going to keep seeing that, and it'll seep into the political sphere.
Don.
Yeah, I agree with everything that's been said, especially the personalization of messages. And I think that's why the only thing I would add would be a challenge, I think, for all of us and for even national campaigns, and that'll be resources. Kind of to Peter's point about, big data, and Brian's about I think that people are collecting a lot of data and learning how to slice it and dice it. The challenge is in having the resources and the people to provide messages to reach all of those different audiences. You can come up with 100 different ways to cut up an audience and serve them something different, but if you don't have the people to write it or produce the graphic or whatever the case may be for that given audience, it doesn't really do a whole lot for you. So I think the resources will be a big challenge for everybody, both Democrat and Republican, but for us as well in the next couple of years and in 2016. Having people who can, this is a pretty low-tech answer, but frankly, people who can write well. People who can write well, that's a skill that a lot of people have these days. People who can actually produce good, compelling graphics, good, compelling videos. Like you mentioned, videos, that's where people want to see. They want to see engaging content. Having the resources and the staff and the people with the talents who can do that will continue to be a challenge, I think. But I won't repeat everything that's been said because I agree with all of it as far as where things are likely headed. And I have nothing original beyond that.
Yep. No, it's interesting that you make that point, that certain basic skills that have always been needed skills for millennia. How to write well, how to write creative content. I've been thinking about this a little bit with what we're doing with Gravity, is it's 21st century shoe leather politics. It's the old is new. How do you do it more efficiently? How do you deliver a message more efficiently and effectively and quickly? How can you have those meaningful conversations with the right people in the right places? So that would lead to my last question. So audience, I'm queuing you up. If you've got questions, I've got one more and then you're next. This is my last question. Is digital, social, mobile technology, is this the end or is it a means to an end?
Means to an end.
Okay.
The goal,
And in your mind, if it's the means to the end, what is the end?
Well, I'll just speak for myself personally.
Know when we're there.
Not even as take who I work for, what I do for a living. Like for me as a small government conservative who, believes in X, Y, and Z, to me, at least in this case, these are tools, these are platforms that we can use to persuade people and have conversations with people to ultimately, in this context, hopefully, agree with us and vote for the people who will help bring about the reforms and changes that we want to see. So that to me, in this context, is what it is. I think from a platform perspective, from Facebook at least, and I think those would agree in that, our mission as a company is to make the world more closer and more interconnected, to make it easier for people to share the things they're interested in, the things they want to talk about. And again, as a conservative, I think that's good for me because I think that, if we're making compelling arguments and providing compelling content, that we can persuade more people to agree with us and ultimately vote with us.
Yeah.
So, that's my take.
I would just add another challenge. I go to a lot of tech conferences, things like PubCon and different word camps around the country, where I go to blogger meetings, and I see probably 5-to-1 liberal bloggers to conservative bloggers. And I would challenge all of you, this technology may seem daunting and these platforms complex, but dive in. And you will be astonished at the amount of impact you can have with your message, your ideas. It is so much easier to reach people today than it's ever been, really, in the history of our country. And these are great trends. Be a part of it.
All right. Okay, all right, I'm going to start with this nice gentleman in the second row. Fire away with your question.
Oh, no. What you would do is if you had that offline list, for example, if you had a list of people who had volunteered or something like that, you would upload that and you would create that audience. We would match who's on Facebook, by email address, for example. And then you could serve them an advertisement, but absolutely not. No, we don't provide email addresses or anything like that.
But you could provide an additional audience, a lookalike audience, and within Facebook that I wouldn't have the access to.
No, right. You could target them with an advertisement, but you wouldn't necessarily know who they are unless they took action and went to your website.
They opted in.
But let me tell you what,
Does that make-
I use their platform all the time, and it is incredibly powerful. And you can find an audience. I could find an audience of people in my neighborhood who liked Rush Limbaugh. It's incredibly powerful. You can find thinkers that think like you using these tools, and it's really empowering. And more people ought to be utilizing this Facebook ad platform because it's incredibly powerful.
Right.
And I can see how that it helped Obama the way it did.
Yeah, I just wanted to make clear that we weren't, that, the information you provide, we do not give that to other people. You can,
You'll take my message to those people,
absolutely, yes, sir.
and that's up to how many
It-
hundreds of millions?
Oh, the audience is however you want to make it. We have 1.2 billion users worldwide and, 132 million every single day in the United States alone.
Facebook won't give you their email address, but they will give you their email address after Facebook connects you with them.
The question essentially came down to is how do you get your message to another audience? Does Facebook give the email to get that there, or is it an opt-in procedure? It's an opt-in procedure.
If I could jump in with Twitter, we like to say you are who you follow and you are what you tweet. So, at Twitter, we don't ask for much personal information. You put in an email address and you put in your handle and a name, whether it's real or not. And based upon who you follow, we can tell a lot about you. If you follow Rush Limbaugh and your IP address is in a certain part of the country, we can target everybody who follows Rush Limbaugh or looks like the same sort of look-alike modeling capabilities we have at Twitter. So based upon these interests and based upon what you tweet. So if you tweet a lot using certain hashtags, if you use TCOT, for instance, top conservatives on Twitter, there are advertisers who can send promoted tweets that will just be served to people who use that hashtag. So there's a way to reach people based on the content of their tweets.
There's nobody up here from Google Plus, but one of the things that I have found that's been really transformative with my blog is the whole authorship authority under Google Plus changes that have come in the last year. And I was at one tech conference and we had a speaker from Google, and I'm sorry I can't tell you his name, but what his message was that if you want to be anonymous on the internet, you want to be irrelevant. That's what he said. And so, I encourage you to be who you are and speak with your authentic voice and not be afraid of that. I've said a lot of controversial things over the years, and, Media Matters likes to write nasty articles about me and what have you. But, everything I put on the internet, I put my real name. And I say who I am, and I say what I say, and I believe what I say, and I encourage everybody to do that. And I think you will find that you will reach a greater audience if you, in fact, are willing to put your name on it. And Google has really done a lot to improve the quality of search results based on the authenticity of the authors. So.
And can I jump in?
Yeah.
I just, you remind me of this, and I do think it's worth pointing out, kind of going back to what would we tell people to do or recommend they do. And I think this is not platform specific necessarily, but if you do run a website, like, for example, you guys or anyone else who runs, whether it's a campaign or a local organization, but optimizing that website so that it integrates well with all of the platforms, so that it integrates well with Google, so that you have open graph tags, so it integrates well with Facebook, so that you have all the sharing and everything else that Twitter needs to make sure your content is shareable and goes out to an audience in a good way, is incredibly important and often underlooked. And the ways of doing this are often very simple. Like open graph tags for Facebook are literally just meta tags. I don't know if people here, no HTML, but it's a meta tag you put in the head of your HTML. That's it. And you automatically make your content much more shareable on Facebook because it brings in the image you want. It brings in the content you want. And so optimizing your website for all these platforms is a simple thing and a very important thing that I think is sometimes overlooked.
I'm going to go from this side of the room. Yes, questions. Why don't you stand up and, we don't have a mic roam in the room, so as loudly as possible.
Hey, my question is about, we talk a lot about authentic engagement. So I work for a company called change.org, where you can start petitions on whatever topic you like. And we look up to, Twitter and Facebook a lot, the way that you all have created this marketplace of ideas, and real authentic dialogue from different perspectives. So we recently created a feature where people that are being petitioned can respond to those petitions on our site. And we just hooked it on. It's in sort of early adoption stages. But if you're an elected official or corporation, you can respond, email your response to all people that have signed a petition to you. And to the extent to which you all have, your partnerships with corporations or political campaigns, how do you coach these folks through the process of engaging in a more authentic way? Because we see people respond, and you drop a press release into the response tool and send it out, and that's great. That's a bunch of people that have heard from you. They've read, your messaging on the topic, but those specially tailored, more authentic, colloquial responses are so much more resonant. I don't know if you all have advice about how to coach people through that process.
I think part of it is responding. I think everyone is pleasantly surprised and maybe even a little bit stunned when Comcast replies and says, "I'm sorry, you just used that language about your cable operator. Maybe we can help you get through this." And I think instantly it kind of calms down everybody, the conversation. Whereas when you think when you're just shouting it out out of frustration and not a real person's there, you might use language you might not otherwise use, hopefully. So I think just taking that opportunity to respond, that in and of itself, though, for a Comcast who does that very well and takes it very seriously, that becomes a big CRM challenge. You need people staffing that handle or that page on Facebook all the time. But they do it well. I mean, and I, as a word of advice, if you ever have problems with your cable or your airline, I wouldn't waste time on the phone. I would send them a firm tweet, and you'll be amazed at how quickly they'll respond. So that's one way to do it. You would think it might not scale, but these very large companies have found a way to do it, and what you're doing seems like another very interesting way to reach the people who are most interested and most passionate about an issue. So there's more than one way to do it.
Yeah, I agree with Peter, and sometimes it's just getting people to again, just first to respond and get used to doing that, and maybe it's at first with that press release, that pre-baked thing they already have put together, but after they see that, even that works a little bit, are more willing and open to doing something a little more different or something a little more engaging the next time. And I agree entirely. A lot of times, I'll use an example from Congress. Representative Rob Whitman, every Friday does a thing called Facebook Friday. He literally says, "I'm going to be here for 20 minutes, ask me any question on X you want." I think they would say, the first few times they did that, you had a lot of people trolling from the other side. But as time went on, they were responding to all these comments, they were responding to questions, and like Peter said, it lowered the temperature. And so the quality of the dialogue, and they do this every Friday now for a long time, so now they're great. But the quality's improved because people know when they go there, they're asking a question, they're getting a response. And so I think, to the point, I think just getting them over that hump and get them to recognize that responding at all is important is the first and best thing.
So you know my strategy. I'm going the other side now. Young gentleman in the stocking hat, stand up and as loudly as possible ask your question.
Yeah, the popular viral video for phone blocks used thunderclap.in as the delivery method for their social campaign. I was wondering if any of the political parties are planning on using that or something similar in the upcoming elections to propagate an idea or spread awareness for an event or so forth.
I don't know about any plans about any of the political parties starting to adopt different platforms, but I can say that from Gen Op's perspective, we see a lot of young people starting to move away from Facebook and Twitter to more exclusive social media communities.
Well, what that platform is basically it uses social media like Twitter and Facebook and basically gets people to sign in with their Facebook and collectively brings them all together to spread a message and it'll send out a status to everybody all at the same time. Create a big splash.
Sure. I mean, I'm familiar with it. That there are ways to do it the right way, and there are some times when it will violate terms and conditions in terms of if it looks like spam, if it is, what the technology does is you've got a message you want to send out at a certain time, and people sign on to do it, and under their handle, everyone tweets out the same message at about the same time. So it makes this thunderclap. Maybe you can get something to trend, or it just overwhelms the system. Just got to make sure that they're doing it the right way. There are proper ways to do it, but you want to make sure you don't fall afoul of the spam.
I guess my question, though, on that would be, when you see those pre-printed postcards that come into a congressional office, it's like, what's the impact? It's all the same thing. It's the exact same postcard. In some ways, it sounds like it's not as authentic. So that I guess what question? Yeah, maybe you could make a big splash. I remember one member of Congress, somebody decided they'd send in a postcard with a penny. So all they did was look at the postcard, throw it out, and put the penny in a jar and just count pennies. And I'm like, well, he's like, we kind of were able to gauge some level of interest in the issue, but he was like, it was just a gag on their part, so we just kept the pennies and threw the postcards.
I bought a lollipop.
Right. And they even will tell you the most impactful dialogue from a constituent was, live conversation or a personalized letter, something personalized where they knew somebody had taken time to invest time into the message and then reach out to them. And if they got 10, 15, 20 of those in a given few hours, they realize something's starting to trend, and if that took place over the next 3 or 4 or 5 days, they realized this was really something authentic that they had to pay attention to. Most of these guys, when they got 1,000 postcards in one day, it was like, oh, that's nice, whatever.
I think that's right. It goes to what we were talking about being authentic and the power of that. I've heard of members and campaigns who will look through all the tweets that they're getting or the comments they're getting and sort through them and look for the ones that look to be people from their area or as close as they can figure out to their area who are actually voters. My suspicion is you get a better shot of getting a response if it's more personal.
Yeah, Floyd.
Yeah, I really look at all platforms as positive, and I try to push material out to as many platforms as possible. Even though they've been creating platforms so quickly lately, it's hard to keep up with all of them. But I want to talk for just a second about spam, because one of the things I hear from political activists and even from starting campaigns is, I've got this email list, it's got 25,000 people on it, and I'm just going to, I've downloaded this email list and I'm going to send this email out to the, please do not spam. That is the quickest way to kill your URL, to kill your website, to kill your campaign, to kill anything you have. Don't spam, especially email spam, because you're going to be targeted, you're going to be out of business almost overnight. There are so many tools. These tools up here allow you to find people that say, hey, I embrace you. I want to work with you. I believe in your campaign, and so opt me in. Please do not just get some email list off the shelf and start spamming people. It will not work. In fact, it will probably kill whatever you're trying to do.
Question from this side. In the back, very last row. If you could stand up and say it as loudly as possible.
You don't want loudly as possible. So this is great. A really interesting panel. And I guess I wanted to bring up something almost related to the spam question. Talk louder. One thing is that so a lot of the techniques you're talking about are borrowed from product marketing, right? I mean, it works the same way for both, or does it? That's my question. Is there a fundamentally different process when you're asking someone to, commit an act of political activism? Is that different than selling them something, or is it not?
'cause there probably isn't one.
Chick-fil-A.
Chick-fil-A is a good.
Chick-fil-A, okay, that's a good one. And then the sort of last thing is that, I don't know if you saw the TNR, the New Republic story a couple weeks ago about the spam from Herman Cain and, Huckabee, them selling their email list themselves to, marketers that might have that conservatives might be interested in, or, yeah, products that conservatives might be interested in, survival packages, gold coins, that kind of thing. That doesn't seem to have killed anything. Like, this article estimated that my company makes like $400,000 a year off of that.
Well, but that's him sending emails, not him. That's totally different. It's not spam. If somebody says, "Hey, I want to be on Mike Huckabee's email list," and they get emails from Huckabee, and they might find, the content to be relevant and important to them, and then they turn around and maybe he sells an email sent from himself. That's very legitimate. I mean, I do that on my website to generate revenue for our business, because that's how we afford the journalists and the video producers and the other people that
These were ads, like these were like from my Huckabee.
Right, they're emails.
Sponsored
That
emails.
is an ad. That's called a long form ad.
I'll comment on the first part. I think there's a really fascinating interplay between Madison Avenue and political advertising, and it's been that way historically. I mean, some of the first ads, going back, several decades, were political ads. When you look at Dow Chemical and when they sponsored a program, it was very political in a way, right? To shift your perception of a company towards something else, and with commercials. I mean, you see how, for instance, Coke and Pepsi went at it for many years. How Microsoft has a very aggressive political angle when they're talking about Google and some of their other competitors. And not coincidentally, their top ad guy was Mark Penn at Microsoft. So there is this very interesting relationship, and I think particularly so in digital. And I think the main reason is campaigns have you might call it the luxury or the necessity to push the envelope. If you're a multi-billion-dollar corporation with a 90-year brand, you're going to be a little bit more reluctant to try the next new thing, particularly when you've got 4 or 5 different ad campaigns planned. If you're Howard Dean and there's no possible way you can keep up with your opponent raising $2,500 checks, you have to find another way to do it. And I bet if you looked at how many corporations had blogs before Howard Dean and that election, you would see that he really, in many ways, I think, brought that mainstream for bloggers out of more of a niche audience. And I think, again, you saw that in 2008 and 2012 with big data and with social networking to some extent. So there's a very interesting interplay there. Does it work the same? I can say that when we're speaking with brands, we give them similar advice. Be authentic. Join the conversation. It's a very social medium, obviously, so you don't want to be tone deaf. And the last great example, though, is corporate, and it is Oreo. When Oreo tweeted out during the Super Bowl blackout, "It's okay, you can dunk in the dark," it was an historic moment in advertising. But you wouldn't have had the cookie if you didn't have Big Bird a few months earlier during the debates. When Mitt Romney mentioned Big Bird, and all of a sudden it started trending, and Big Bird responded, and PBS even jumped in with an ad. And what's remarkable, again, is how fast things are changing. So if you recall, the Oreo Super Bowl ad, or not even an ad, the Oreo Super Bowl tweet was, let's say, February 3rd of 2013. And they were praised for being the smartest marketers around, right? When they were able to respond in real time to something interesting and get a huge amount of traction with that. It was 10 days later, February 13th, the response to the State of the Union, when Senator Rubio took the drink out of the water. I'm sure everybody remembers that. Instantly, Poland Spring started trending. And instantly, people started saying, "Where the hell is Poland Spring? This is their moment. How often is Poland Spring going to be trending?" And an hour went by, and 2 hours went by, and 5 hours went by, and they missed it. And that was an example of how fast things can change from being, oh, you're a genius, real-time marketing, to where are you? You need to be real-time marketing because everybody's talking about you.
And the Rubio people did start selling water bottles right after that, though.
Yeah. And Rubio incidentally did a very good job with it. He responded afterwards and I think made some contributions to charity, and they raised a lot of money off of that tweet. So he learned a lesson.
Do you still have your question? All right, go away. Fire away. If you could stand up and say it loudly for the benefit of the room.
Sure. I think we're seeing as the web is becoming more visual with platforms like Pinterest and Vine and Tumblr. How do you think that's going to affect political campaigns and crafting messages?
Well, I think it's going to continue. It already is visual, and I think it'll continue to be so. I mentioned before one of the challenges is having people who can produce that content, who can produce good visual, whether it's photos or graphics or videos. But yeah, you look at Instagram. Instagram's grown tremendously over the last couple of years. We added autoplay videos now. If someone puts up a 15-second or less video, it autoplays in people's feeds, and the engagement's tremendous. And same on Facebook. A video that's natively uploaded, the engagement is incredible. And so I think that's picked up, and it's only going to continue in the next couple of years. They're visual mediums, and again, the way people are interacting with these tools to the point of this session is on their phones. And so as you're scrolling through on a feed, whether it's on Twitter or Facebook, you see something that's visual. That's what that's what catches your eye. That's what you click on. That's what you interact with. And so it's only going to continue and increase.
There was a great example of this when the president released his budget a few days ago. Some of you may have seen Speaker Boehner put out a Vine, and a Vine is a 6-second looping video. And coincidentally, 6 seconds is about the perfect length for a soundbite. And he said the president's budget spends too much, doesn't save enough, and I'm over it, whatever it was. But he got his message across very quickly in real time in a video, which just auto-played. And one of the interesting things about Vine, that auto loop is in the industry what we call frequency. So the average Vine is seen 3 or 4 times because by the time you find the pause button, or you've already we already got you 3 times. So it's a very powerful way to get across a political message.
And our content on Facebook is primarily memes. So a lot of visual images that we were able to grow our fan base primarily through using these images with a quick, short message on them that are kind of hitting on the issue of the day. And I think that visualization is what's really key and what really fosters a lot of sharing and helps grow your audience. So we were able to grow up to 2.6 million on Facebook, primarily by using photos and videos.
This gentleman has been very patient. If you could stand up and ask your question as loudly as possible. Yes, you. Yep. You're the man.
Sitting up here, you have maybe 3 or 4 generations, to your point, of disruptive technology when it's used correctly. It's disruptive to the user and supporters to the learner. And by the way, Floyd was his own disruptive technology. With his use of being able to put out a video that earned media in ways that had never been earned before. It would have changed the course of the campaign. So in a way, to your point, to remind me, whether it's a means or an end, isn't really the goal here to stick to the old platform to encourage campaigns conservators and not rush to have a media, social media strategy, but to have a traditional strategy in campaigns, but to use the technologies in a disruptive way.
No, it's a good thought.
I would agree with that. In my opinion, these are tools in a toolbox for campaigns and for political organizations. And so therefore, they should be, they're very important tools, and they have very different uses and they work very differently than traditional ones, but they're still tools. And so to your question, should it be considered a separate thing or part of an overall strategy? I do think it should be part of an overall strategy. You want people who understand the importance of them and how to use them appropriately and creatively. And so that may be slightly different, but they should not be add-ons. They should not be value adds. They should be part of whether it's field or fundraising or communication. organizations from top to bottom, every one of these platforms should be a part of the strategic thinking.
Integrated approach.
Absolutely.
And we say a lot of times around the office, we're trying to take kind of the offline onto the online in a lot of cases. So we're trying to take mailers into memes, and we're trying to go, instead of going door to door, we're trying to go Facebook friend to Facebook friend, as well as instead of doing phone banks, we're trying to do more Google Hangouts. So it's not necessarily that we're going to get away from the traditional get out the vote. It's just an extension of that. And so taking the same strategies that you would as you're going door to door, you can now do as on Facebook going friend to friend, or on Twitter. And so in a lot of ways, like you said, it's just an extension. And that's really seems to be the best strategy.
We're going to do one more question from this side, one more from this side. Yes, yes.
Nice. One of my big problems with social media, I'm on it. I'm on basically everything. I don't really see it from a local level. You know, this is something that we're talking about. You know, huge campaigns, talking about Romney and Obama in presidential campaigns. Going to a local level, there's a lot of space here that I think is wasted. Do we, you know, as a party, is there anything that we can do about that as just social media types? Like, I've tried to contact my state GOP to tell them how bad our local GOP is, having a Facebook page, which they don't, or a Twitter handle, which they also don't. So, you know, help us help them, I guess, is basically. Is there a way, is there anything that you guys have on that?
I would just say I've seen local campaigns use these very same tools extremely effectively. I mean, if you're a state legislative candidate, you can target using the Facebook ad platform, you know, right down to you know, the zip code, and you can craft your messages to local communities. So, yeah, I mean, we've been talking a lot about, you know, what Barack Obama and Mitt Romney have done, but each and every one of these tools can be used in a local community, I think, as effectively, maybe more effectively, because less people are doing them. You expect the national candidates to do it, but when you're the only one running for state representative that uses these tools, that's going to differentiate you from your competition, because they're not going to be able to do it as effectively.
I think it's on all of us in this room to do that. To your point about actually helping, you know, our local parties, our local organizations. You know, I live out in Virginia, and you know, my local county party just, you know, called up or sent me an email and said, hey, you know, you mind coming out and talking about X, Y, and Z? And so I went there to talk about Facebook, but it turned into a more general conversation about, oh, you know, like we should be doing this and that, and so just personally, just, you know, trying to help, you know, local folks who are running for office, and so I think it's just on everybody in this room who is engaged and who's using them well, and again, producing good content and being creative to take that initiative and help.
I think it is also, and not without a lot of hard work, but it will also trickle down, I believe, in 2014. Before Twitter, I was at Google, and I started their political sales team. In 2008, maybe a dozen campaigns used Google search, and that includes a lot of big presidentials in the primaries and in the general. By 2010, hundreds and hundreds of campaigns were using Google search. You almost can't imagine a political campaign now not having some sort of a search ad. I still help sell Google 3 years later. It's just almost malpractice as a campaign not to do that. I think that will become the case with respect to Twitter and Facebook and some of these other platforms.
Last question in the very back corner of the room. Stand up, and if you could, as loudly as possible.
Not a problem. What are the best case uses that you've seen, the most innovative, the most useful things that you've seen done with big data? You know, we talked earlier about particularly the marketing techniques. There's a lot of marketing tools that aren't being fully developed yet, particularly adaptive search, you know, identifying more people. And, you know, yes, it is hard to generate a lot of unique, correct content for that. But are there things that have been done that have been useful or maybe evergreen items?
I can say, you know, at Twitter, we're also developing some of the the targeting capabilities that Don mentioned, list matching and retargeting, and Twitter ID targeting, so targeting people based on their handles. It's early stages there. Another thing that we're doing, though, which is related, I wouldn't yet call it big data, but a capability called TV ad targeting. And what that allows us to do is, as I mentioned before, millions of people now, nearing a majority of us, are in front of the TV while we have a device on the internet. And what we're now able to do is serve a promoted tweet, serve an ad essentially, to all the people who are tweeting about or engaging with tweets about a certain program. So if you are running a spot during the local news or really during any TV show on TV, there's a certain percentage of people who are watching that show and are tweeting about it, and you can now serve ads to them. So you're hitting them twice on both places. And you can also just target TV shows, even if you're not running the spot. And what we've seen is consistently, if a user sees the ad on their phone or on their in Twitter as well as on TV, 95% increase ad recall. A 30% plus increase in favorability or intent to purchase, if that's relevant. So I think that there's going to be this idea, again, it's not a direct response to the question, but how do you link different types of data, and one piece of data being what people are watching and engaging with on television, with online, which we know increasingly people are doing at the same time. And we've seen some examples of that incidentally. For instance, during the State of the Union, we had one group who was targeting people using the hashtag SOTU. And then we had another one who uploaded the Twitter IDs of 535 people, thereabouts, and served their promoted tweets to those people to make sure that they were getting their message in front of the right audience.
All right, we've got, we're pretty much out of time. I want to thank all the panelists for being here, for sharing your thoughts. Really appreciate you taking the time and appreciate you coming. You're dismissed. Thank you.
Hey, nice to meet you. You're making the rounds. How long have you been at Facebook?
December.
Oh, yeah, great.
I took 2 weeks off in November to spend with my daughter and joined December 2nd.
Oh, good for you. Excellent. I was just at an event yesterday with Francesca.
Western, yeah, I'm in
Is that right?